Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Michael Richman, a double board certified cardiothoracic surgeon. So let's start with a headline that scrolled across your feed recently, or maybe you saw in the news, and that was that Elon Musk claimed that within 3 years his Tesla Optimus robot will outperform the best human surgeons on the planet. So pause on that for a second. A machine that currently struggles to fold a t-shirt is going to beat a cardiothoracic surgeon like myself with nearly a decade of training before they let me out in the real world to operate independently at open heart surgery. But let me tell you a little bit about open heart surgery. So every stitch, every decision must be made with a perfect outcome. I know that's a high bar, but it's true. Because when somebody's life is in your hands, literally, there's no room for anything less than perfection. One little thing goes wrong, and a patient will literally die on the operating table. There's no other surgical specialty that requires this precision on each and every case. No matter how tired you are, you still have to be perfect. And no two cases are alike, and much of the stuff is not written in a textbook, especially when you're doing something ordinary, but then something happens that's unexpected. And that's like dealing with a very calcified aorta or a bleed in the back of the heart that's very hard to get to. So today I want to walk you through why this prediction is fantasy, to be honest with you. But more importantly, I want to show you what the future of surgery really looks like. Spoiler alert, it's actually cooler than a humanoid robot because it involves us working with the machine, not being replaced by it. So let's start talking about what I call the three walls, and that's hardware and data and then the dreaded bureaucracy. So let's start with the hardware. Why can't this Optimus just pick up a scalpel and go? Well, the first reason is surgery is not a video game. So when I cut into tissue, I'm not just looking, I'm feeling. I rely on tactile feedback to tell the difference, for example, between a tumor and healthy tissue next to it. Or how do I know if I'm putting a suture through something and tying it, how hard to pull up or how light to push down so I don't tear through the heart. So current robots, including Optimus, can't reliably tell the difference between soft liver tissue, if you will, and hard bone. It lacks the sensory touch. So even with that advanced hand design he loves to show off, it lags far behind the human wrist in dexterity and the fingers in sensitivity. And as I tell everybody, there's no better instrument than my hands to accomplish this. So let's say we fix the hands and the fingers. The next wall is the data wall. And Musk loves to compare surgery to self-driving cars, saying we have millions of miles of driving data from the cars. But you can't apply that logic here. To train an AI to be a great surgeon, you need digitized data from millions of successful surgeries. The problem, as I said, every single body is different. Every single surgery is different. It's biological chaos, quite literally. We simply don't have the quality or quantity of data to feed the machine. And then there's the third wall, the regulators. Even if the robot was perfect tomorrow, getting it through the regulators is a nightmare. And as you know, and you hear about the data centers, regulators are still trying to figure out how to approve an AI that can update itself overnight. So if this robot changes its algorithm, is it still the same device that was approved last week? So as you know, the wheels grind really slowly. Now let's say, even if we solve the hands, the data, the paperwork, we hit the hardest problem at all. And that's teaching a robot to think on its feet when chaos erupts. And in cardiothoracic surgery, nothing ever goes exactly as planned. There's always a little ripple. And even the most experienced surgeons get surprised when we open up a patient's chest. And I'll give you an example. So when we do what's called a redo surgery, it means doing a second surgery, often many years later. The heart is always stuck to the underside of the breastbone. And I've seen with my own eyes, guys actually saw the heart in half. And a lot of times the patient even dies before, you get their chest open. And, clearly this only happens very infrequently. And the good news is we each have little tricks to avoid doing this or avoiding this problem. But here's my question to you. How does any algorithm predict that the heart may be stuck to the sternum, or are the adhesions, the connections really dense, or are they soft, or where is it stuck, or where is it not stuck? How does a robot know that its human captain just made an unavoidable mistake? It gets worse, because the literature is full of cases where robotic staplers just shut down mid-procedure. The software reads the tissue and throws up an error message like tissue too thick to continue. It just stops. Meanwhile, the patient's bleeding out and dying, and the robot is frozen because it doesn't know how to override its own rule book. So can a robot distinguish a harmless abnormality from a life-threatening crisis? Can it decide to abort a stapling sequence without causing a major bleed? And the answer is no, because it doesn't have intuition. It doesn't have situational awareness. It just has math. And when blood is filling up the chest cavity, I can tell you the best mathematician isn't going to save you or solve the problem. So if they aren't replacing us, what are they doing? And this is where the story gets genuinely exciting, because the future isn't a binary choice, human or robot. It's human and robot, because we're moving towards what the robotic experts call a dyadic partnership. So think of it as an AI fellow or a surgical co-pilot. And this isn't sci-fi. At Johns Hopkins, for example, they have a system called SRTH that responds to real-time natural language voice commands. So if the surgeon says, take the clip a little bit higher, it adapts instantly to the simulated bleeding or weird anatomy, essentially. The problem is this doesn't work very well in heart surgery or liver transplant surgery. But before any of these co-pilots touch a heart or a lung, they have to survive the regulatory gauntlet. And in fact, in some countries, they're even using what is called, I think it's called sandbox environments, which are real-world trials in controlled settings in which they can gather data before full approval. But where are we today? You have systems like the NanoTrack for guiding neurosurgery and a thing called Yomi for planning dental implants. But notice the pattern. These are assistive devices. They guide, they plan, they navigate. They do not make life or death decisions on their own. The bar for true autonomy is so high that calling it a 3-year timeline isn't just optimistic, it's totally detached from reality. So where does this leave us? Obviously, his vision is great for grabbing headlines and clicks, but the path to a fully autonomous cardiothoracic surgeon isn't measured in years, not at all. It's measured in decades. Maybe it's never going to happen. So, the real legacy isn't going to be building a machine that replaces the surgeon, contrary to what people think. It's going to be learning how to build, trust, and manage an intelligent collaborator. So with that, I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.